If you want to get into music production, this video series will cover the 6 learning curves you'll conquer along the way. First video covered DAWs, the DAWs, that's the software on your computer. Second video covered music theory. The last video covered putting that theory into practice, that's the actual performance. Please go check those out. This time around, we're going to talk about capturing that performance. We're talking about recording. Mic check, 1 2 1 2. Hello everyone, I'm Peter Elfman from Stereostatic. I'm a novice music producer making videos for other up-and-coming producers like me. This guy here is my buddy Starburst. He's here to keep me company and check my levels. Alright, let's get going. Vlog date 2024-02.17. I am sure you will figure it out. How are you doing? The question's not rhetorical. Let me know in the comments how you're doing. How am I doing? Who cares? This one's gonna be long, so we're just gonna jump right into it. Alright, recording. Making music is a marriage of art and science. Recording that music can often be very technical. There's usually a lot of best practices to follow in a given situation to get the best possible recording. That isn't to say that the recording process can't be part of the creative process. In order to incorporate recording into your creative process, you have to really understand what you're doing and the tools that you're working with. There's a lot you'll learn, but like most things, it can be broken down. In this video, we're going to cover 3 categories. That's hardware, which is microphones, recording devices, and cables. There's the environment, and understanding when to use what hardware in a given situation. Lastly, you're going to learn how to process the recording, usually in a DAW. Now, I'm only going to touch on the surface of all of these topics. I can't really bestow all of the knowledge upon you, mostly because I'm still learning this stuff myself. What I'm doing in this video and with this whole series and in most of these videos in general is I'm trying to give you a roadmap of what lies ahead on your music production journey so that you can optimize your learning and to help you focus your attention and resources. Topic 1, hardware. Let's talk about microphones. Microphones are essentially electric ears, but they don't hear what we hear or in the same way. Every microphone model has its own characteristics and idiosyncrasies, and that can also be true for individual microphones, especially a used one. There are 3 basic types of microphones. Condenser microphones are non-directional. Mostly. Basically, they will pick up most of what's happening in the area. They are great in controlled circumstances and are often the type of microphone that will come with a field recorder. Dynamic microphones are highly directional, usually picking up what's directly in front of them best with severe fall off as you angle away from the sweet spot. If you've ever seen a live performance, most singers are using dynamic mics. If they try and use a condenser microphone, then those microphones will pick up everything that's happening on stage, and that would be an absolute nightmare during a live performance. Ribbon microphones are sort of in between. They're bidirectional, meaning they pick up best what's in front of and behind them, and not so much what's on the sides. They are also billed as being able to pick up sounds closest to the way we hear, which makes them optimum for recording voices. They are also delicate, which means you don't necessarily want to use one out in the field. They're best used in a studio. There are hundreds of permutations of each type, each with their own best use case. There are shotgun mics, contact microphones, instrument-specific microphones. For example, if you want to record a live performance for film or television, you're going to use a shotgun mic on a long stick called a boom. If you want to record drums, there are typically a collection of microphones placed strategically around the set to capture the sound the best way. Now, this video is already going to be long, so I don't want to go too deep into the weeds here, but I hope you have enough to get you started on your own research. Did you hear that? Don't fall over. There's someone outside with a motorcycle, and it's frightening on my little shoulders I can hear. Recorders. Mics have to be plugged into something that will do the actual recording. There are a ton of those, many categorized for their functionality. For example, there are multi-track recorders that allow you to actually record live performances and make a song without ever using a computer. There are field recorders, which have limited functionality beyond actually recording the sound. Field recorders often come with built-in microphones. Here's the one I've been using lately. It's a low-end model from Zoom manufacturer. It's pretty good. I would recommend it if you're on a budget. Cables. If your recorder doesn't come with a microphone, or the mic it comes with isn't great for your purposes, you're going to need a cable to attach your microphone to the device. Most of what you'll be using are XLR cables. That stands for external line return. Yeah, I know, don't at me. They're going to look kind of like this, and they have a 3-pronged connector. You might run into another type of cable and connector called the TRL, or through reflect line. I don't actually have one of those to show you. I'm not sure what the best use cases are for those, because like I said, I'm still learning this stuff. When you're buying a cable, pay attention to the connector ends. Cables come in male to male, female to female, and male to female. You need to know what your device is using and what your microphone's using, and purchase accordingly. Now, here's something I wish I had known about XLR cables when I got started. They come in 2 basic types, balanced and unbalanced, and there is definitely a price difference between the two. Functionally, the difference between them is that a balanced cable is less likely to introduce noise into the signal than unbalanced. For shorter cable lengths, the difference is negligible, so you can usually get away with what you can afford. But the longer you need your cable to be, the more likely you're going to have to look at getting a balanced cable. There's some other stuff going on between the two, but that is the primary difference as far as I've learned. So once again, before you make your purchases, do your research. The environment. In order to choose the right hardware, you should know what kind of recording environment you'll be working in. Recording outdoors has its own techniques and challenges. Recording indoors allows you to mitigate a lot of potential recording challenges. The first thing you have to be aware of are the source of sounds. Make sure there aren't any heating or cooling units near the microphone. Keep your computer away from the microphone, because the fan noise will definitely ruin takes. If you're working out of a room in your house, make sure that the sounds from the rest of your house aren't bleeding into your recording. Things like washing machines, pets, bundles of joy of various ages, and these things. Silence this mofo before you start recording, especially if you're working by yourself, because there will come a time where you won't hear the boop beep while you're recording. You'll notice it after the fact, and now you either have to cut that part out, find some way of working around it, or retake the recording. There's a lot of time that you won't ever get back. As an example of everything I just mentioned, when I was recording my first audiobook, I was using a condenser microphone. It was picking up everything. Traffic outside, people screaming, planes flying overhead, and my damn cell phone. I have since moved to a dynamic microphone. Accounting for the environment is the first step in the battle. The next step is making physics work for you instead of against you. Oh no! I mentioned science. Relax. It's not that serious. The basic thing you need to understand is that sound bounces off hard surfaces. We hear this every day, especially in rooms, and our brains and our ears filter out those echoes, but microphones do not. They pick up all that mess, and it can be a pain in the patootie to manage after the fact. It's always best to surround your recording space with soft surfaces that absorb reflections. Reflections meaning sound bouncing off of things. This can mean putting a rug beneath your recording space, putting up sound baffles on your walls and ceilings, and putting in what they call bass traps in the corners of your room. Definitely look that up. I don't want to go into the details here. If you're just recording vocals, it's common for people to do those recordings in their clothing closet. All that clothing naturally absorbs reflections, and that makes for a cleaner recording. If your recording space is noisy in general, like I mentioned before, a dynamic microphone will make life a lot easier for whoever's processing the recording. Processing. That segues us into the last topic of the video. You got your hardware, you got your space, you made your recording. Now what? The specifics of audio processing are dependent on what you recorded and its purpose. Broadly speaking, the first thing you want to do is normalize your audio and or remove any unwanted background noise, like white noise and whatever's happening behind you. There are a ton of techniques and a lot of plugins, a lot of them free, that can help you do that. If you're recording vocals, you'll also want to de-ess the recording. When we make certain sounds like S's and X's, most mics pick up that particular frequency pretty harshly. There are quite a few techniques to manage it, again, using plugins, many of which are free. Here's a fun fact. Everybody's sibilant frequency is different, so you'll have to play around with each person's recordings. Thankfully, It's a consistent frequency for a given individual. So once you find it, take note of it and you'll be able to mitigate it in future recordings with that person. For example, mine is around 9 kilohertz. If you're recording yourself, one of the first things you want to do is find your sibilant frequency and maybe make a preset for it. Now, a quick note about recording yourself. We are all used to hearing our voices both resonating inside of our bodies as well as externally. So when we hear our voices from a microphone where it's just the external, our natural instinct is to dislike the recording. Most people dislike the sound of their own recorded voices. That is natural. You just have to sort of get used to it and let it go. We can't ever get our own voices to sound the way we hear them, and if we manage to do that, then it wouldn't sound right to anybody else. You just have to suck it up. For instrument and vocal processing, there are also resonances that have to be managed. Resonance happens when a particular frequency finds a sweet spot and starts bouncing around a bunch. That registers as that particular frequency sounding louder than other frequencies on a fairly consistent basis. Every room has their resonance frequencies, which is why it's best to record in a treated room, and many acoustic instruments have their own resonances. If you're recording to make music, you also want to employ an equalizer to manage unwanted high and low frequencies and mitigate any spots where frequencies of two instruments are competing. Alright, that's enough out of me. As a teaser, I want to talk more about production in a future video. For this video, I just wanted to hit the broader points that intersect with recording, because knowing the final product will definitely play a part in choosing your hardware and recording spaces and what techniques you'll use. Hopefully this video will help you prepare for future productions. Please drop in comments any questions or suggestions you might have for future videos. I would generally love to hear from you. I have been Peter Elfman. This guy right here has been Starburst. Remember, we are all more alike than we are different. Don't take any shit from anybody, and you'll catch me in the next one.